When it comes down to it, there are so many great jazz musicians out there that you need to be listening to. There's so many that have so much to offer, so much inspiration, and had such a big impact on jazz history. But in today's video, I want to boil it down to what I think are the 5 most important jazz musicians that you need to be familiar with and listening to. That's coming right up. What's up, Brent here from LearnJazzStandards.com, which is a blog, a podcast, and videos all geared towards helping you become a better jazz musician. Make sure you subscribe below if you've never done that before. Hit that bell notification button. Like I said, a ton of jazz musicians out there, but in my opinion, there are 5 that made really big innovations and impacts on jazz history that has influenced how we play jazz music today. Now, I'm going to go into my list of 5, but I'll give a little disclaimer right away. There are going to be a ton of musicians that I leave out, and some of you are going to get very angry at me. I know this because I did a blog post similar to this years ago and got a lot of people upset about the guitar players I left out and the other trumpet players and saxophone players. This is not a comprehensive list. These are the ones that I think are the most important. So with that being said, what I want you to do is leave in the comments below, what do you think are the most important jazz musicians of all time? Just fill that comment section up with that, and we can, just cool our tempers down, and, that's going to be your release for you. Jazz musician number 1 is Louis Armstrong. When it comes down to it, Louis Armstrong was one of the most impactful jazz musicians of all of jazz history. When he came onto the scene, obviously he was innovating jazz music. The sound of his trumpet, the singing, he really was the person that mostly invented scat singing. And just in general, if you don't listen to Louis Armstrong, I mean, you're just going to be completely lost. So start with Louis Armstrong if you have not done that already. My personal favorite album of Louis Armstrong is the classic one that he did with Ella Fitzgerald. It's Ella and Louis, so lots of great songs of that album. Of course, you need to listen to his Hot 5 and Hot 7 bands. Those are really important, obviously, so check those out. I just like that one because, hey, it's classic. It's great. My favorite Louis Armstrong recording comes right off that album as well, and it's called Cheek to Cheek. Just love that recording. Love that song a lot. So Cheek to Cheek, Louis Armstrong, absolutely just have to know him. All right, jazz musician number 2 is Duke Ellington. Now, Duke Ellington is arguably one of the most important musicians of, well, a lot of jazz, but especially the swing era. He had the Duke Ellington Orchestra. He composed so many tunes that are now in the Great American Songbook, which is what we often use for jazz standards. And of course, without Duke Ellington, Billy Strayhorn, he wrote so many songs for the Duke Ellington Orchestra. Just all in all, you really need to know Duke Ellington, his music, his band, super, super important. One of my favorite albums is Ellington at Newport. Now, this was in 1956, and a lot of people say it's one of the best Ellington recordings of all time, and one of the more important parts of revitalizing his career, because at that point, the heyday of swing music was kind of dying out. Bebop and hard bop and all that stuff had taken over. So this was an incredible concert, and the tune that really stands out in this concert is Diminuendo and Crescendo in Blue, where Paul Gonsalves, the saxophone player, takes this incredibly long solo, and it is astounding. The crowd starts going absolutely nuts, dancing, and Paul Gonsalves apparently, passed out, or not passed out, but collapsed on the ground afterwards, and Duke Ellington took over and was playing. I mean, the energy is ridiculous, so definitely listen to that recording. Now, my favorite Ellington song to play is probably In a Mellow Tone. Love that tune a lot. I mean, just so swinging. So I always like to call that one when I'm just really in for a swinging tune. So Duke Ellington, have to know his music, super important in jazz history. Now, jazz musician number 3 is Charlie Parker, and I would have to almost lump in Dizzy Gillespie with Charlie Parker because they were really the duo that pioneered the bebop movement in the 1940s, but Charlie Parker really gets a lot more recognition for that. So Charlie Parker and Dizzy, you definitely have to know, but Charlie Parker was just really a huge innovator in the music. Like, he basically was taking what was before danceable, popular swing music, and all of a sudden he was turning it into this virtuosic thing where, composing tunes that just had way more complex harmony, were all about, these angular melodies. So Charlie Parker is just someone you absolutely have to know in jazz history. The style of bebop has influenced even what we play today in jazz music. Now, as far as favorite albums, I'm not sure that I have one because there's just so many great compilations out there. In fact, mostly what you find around Charlie Parker and even Dizzy Gillespie are compilation albums, which you will find amazing tunes out there to listen to. As far as favorite songs, it's almost hard to pick one because there's so many great ones like Confirmation and, Dizzy Gillespie had Hot House. I mean, there's so many tunes, right? But the one that I love to play all the time is Yardbird Suite. Bridge. Anyways, Yardbird Suite, love that tune. Gotta know Charlie Parker, super important in jazz history. All right, jazz musician number 4 is definitely important, and that would be Miles Davis. Now, Miles Davis is important for many reasons. First of all, he's one of the only musicians that actually adapted with the times. For example, he started off in the bebop era, and he even played with Charlie Parker in the 1940s. Then he went on and he started playing hard bop and cool bop, which is more the West Coast style in the 50s. He started playing fusion music. He even started playing pop music at the end of his career, right? So he's just really spanned everything that was happening in jazz. On top of that, of course, he was an incredibly melodic, beautiful player, and so a lot of inspiration for his playing itself and his compositions, although there's some debate about whether he stole some from people, which is, neither here or there. But, he also was really important for being a band leader, bringing together incredible musicians, right? Like Wynton Kelly and Bill Evans, and then Herbie Hancock and Ron Carter and, Tony Williams. All these people, really exist and became big, largely in part because of Miles Davis and then being a part of his band. Now, my favorite Miles Davis album is Someday My Prince Will Come. I love the Cannonball, the Hank Mobley and the John Coltrane and all those guys. I love that particular band. So Someday My Prince Will Come is my favorite. My favorite Miles Davis tune is probably Blue and Green. It's just a beautiful, beautiful ballad. So I always love that one. Miles Davis, important for so many different reasons. Make sure you're well familiar with him. Now, the last musician I want to talk about is John Coltrane, who, in my opinion, was one of the biggest innovators in jazz music. And even today, if you go out and listen to really great saxophone players play and other musicians, you can hear lots of John Coltrane influence. Now, of course, harmonically, he had stuff like giant steps and countdown and his particular changes that he was applying over different tunes. But even just the things that he was playing and the approaches that he was taking were really pushing the boundaries. Not only was he an incredible bebop and hard bop player, but he was really developing his own sound that has really influenced modern jazz. Now, as far as favorite John Coltrane albums, it's again really hard to pick because there's such different styles that he really was involved with, from the Miles Davis quintet to, his way later stuff. That's more ethereal and out there. But my favorite probably is Coltrane Sound, closely followed by Coltrane Jazz. It's really hard, again, to pick a favorite. It's really hard to pick a favorite tune. I right now do love the way he plays the ballad Weaver of Dreams off of that Cannonball and Coltrane album. That's just a beautiful song. Right? So Weaver of Dreams, that's a nice song. So John Coltrane, again, hugely important. Just to summarize, we've got Louis Armstrong, we've got Duke Ellington, we've got Charlie Parker, we've got Miles Davis, we've got John Coltrane. All of these you have to know, but like I said, please fill up the comment sections with the ones that you think are important, that you thought were innovators. Even if you don't think they're the most innovative, love to just fill that up with as many different ideas as possible so we can all go out and start checking out some great jazz musicians. All right? That is all for today's video. I want to thank you so much for watching. Appreciate you. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.